Ken Wessel is a versatile and soulful guitarist, composer, and educator with a unique voice in the jazz world. Known for his work with revolutionary jazz artist Ornette Coleman as a member of Primetime, Ken has performed in 27 countries, appearing at major jazz festivals, concert halls, and with orchestras like the New York Philharmonic. His music explores intersections of jazz and Indian music, collaborating with global artists such as Badal Roy and Debashish Bhattacharya. A dedicated educator and composer, Wessel continues to inspire through master classes, acclaimed recordings like Unstrung and Weights and Measures, and a career that bridges tradition and innovation. So, Ken, good to see you. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Pleasure
my
being here.
my pleasure. So kind of talk to me about what's coming up for you in the new year and everything. Are you still teaching in New York right now?
Yeah, I'm actually teaching a lot right now,
Yeah.
and it's great. Yeah, I'm I teach at the Manhattan School of Music, which is a block away from me. I just started there this year, so that's that's been great. And
That's sort of your home base, right?
what's
You're
that?
teaching?
Well, I'm sort of new at the Manhattan School. But I do live in New York, and I'm also teaching at City College and Western Connecticut State University in Danbury, and I teach at a workshop called the New York Jazz Workshop in Midtown Manhattan. So I'm sort of, you know, here and there, uh, but I love teaching, so it's been good.
The guitar's in the hands a lot.
Yes, yeah. So
So what, I'm sure there's a difference in, these different programs and everything. Do you kind of have the freedom to structure the curriculum, you know, the way you want to, or, to have carte blanche, so to speak, in these, institutions?
I guess so. Um, yeah. I mean, I feel like there's certain things that I do want to um, you know uh, expose my students to, uh, and if I'm teaching private lessons, everything is going to be a little different with everybody, just because people have different ways of processing information, or different stylistic leanings, or um, different levels. And if I'm teaching classes, um, it's a little the level of students might be different, and but um, I think there's probably some kind of a common thread that runs through there, which is sort of my take on things. Um,
They see the Klein guitar and then they want to go out and buy one.
well, that's hard to do nowadays because
Exactly.
they don't make them anymore. But yeah, I mean, I do. I've been playing headlesses for a while now, and I have a couple of headlesses made by this guy Fernando Oletza, and that they're called Soletza. That he's a Spanish. He lives in Spain, and he makes some good guitars. So um, yeah, some of those.
Did you
Some of
ever
my
play on a Steinberger when, back in the 1980s?
um, I never had a Steinberger. No, I played one. I played some, but I never had a Steinberger. The Klein actually, that was sort of a. I think that was Steve Klein's response to the Steinberger, because he ended up using the Steinberger bridge, and for his Klein guitars.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, both of my Kleins have Steinberger bridges on them.
What
Um,
drew you to those guitars originally as opposed to playing an arch top or a Strat? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because first of all, they feel beautiful. I played one before. The tone is remarkable. So, kind of talk to me a little bit about what drew you to those, because those are special guitars.
yeah, it's interesting, and I agree that they really sound nice, and I'm trying to remember exactly what I certainly I learned about the Kleins from listening to Bill Frisell and watching Frisell because he early on in the '90s and maybe before, well, maybe '90s, he was playing Klein pretty exclusively, and I had a little bit of tendonitis and stuff, and I thought, maybe I should go for a guitar that was a little bit, being a small guy, which you can't tell from me sitting down, but anybody who sees me walking around will see that. But a regular guitar like an arch top, it's not made for small guys, like those L6s or L5s or whatever, um, and you sort of have to bring the guitar over this way to really get it into your midsection there. And there's something about the Klein. It's very ergonomically designed, and he even cut the body shape so it sort of sits right here.
Did Mick Goodrick play a Klein too?
Yes, Mick Goodrick played a Klein, and pretty much had the same one that the original one that I bought. Mick had that also, yeah. And it just feels like when you put it on, either standing up or sitting down, it's right here. It's not like this, and you gotta, pull it over. The other thing about Klein, which is probably it's very unique about the Klein, in addition to the headless element of it, is that Steve Klein designed the neck and the fingerboard. It's just one piece of rosewood. It's not a glued together neck and fingerboard. So it's one piece of rosewood that he cut the frets into. So his idea was, why would I cut a hole in the middle of a piece of wood to put a truss rod in to make it more stable? Why would I cut a hole in a piece of wood to make it more stable? It's just it's like a baseball bat. So, and he's right in a way, because I think the reason the Kleins sound like they do is because it's just that solid piece of wood with an incredible, response and resonance. It's not two pieces glued together of different woods that, warp and bend at different rates. So his idea that he didn't think that these guitars would move.
Yeah, and I was watching a video of you playing with Bruce Arnold.
Yeah,
Duo. It sounded yeah.
Nice. I love the sound of it. But the thing about it is wood, and it does move a little bit. It doesn't move, like in the weather changes, summer or whatever. When the weather gets extreme, the wood moves. It's wood, even if it's not two pieces glued together or whatever. But it doesn't move like my other guitars that have truss rods. But when it does move, you can't adjust it. So you have to get fret work done on it.
Right.
That's a drag, sort of. And so for a long time I was, man, I love this guitar, but once every year or two, I have to get the frets shaved because of the wood. The wood's moved a little bit, and then I got another Klein. That a friend of mine sold me, Amanda Monaco. She had a Klein with a trans trem, and that's an incredible. It's an incredible thing, but the trans trems are too squirrely.
You know what an Aeroband guitar is?
Aeroband.
Yeah, they just came out. So it's basically it's a guitar. It's almost like it's like a synth guitar in a sense, but it's like there's no actual strings on the neck. It's like just silicone that feel like nylon strings in a sense, but they don't move up and down. You push on them and you can get these sounds like a piano on it. They're really cool. But when you had mentioned that the tendonitis, it made me think of it because it's so easy to play this thing, and it's just kind of fun too. I thought you might think it's.
So you're just touching the The
Yeah, you're just touching, but but there are some like little strings in the body that I mean they don't make any sound. But they're like about this big or so, and they're shaped from like the low E to the high E. Those you pick. That's what gives you the sound with the picking. But the neck is actually just the neck with these silicone, I
I
guess
gotta,
you yeah, they're pretty cool, but I'm just curious if you had heard of
I
those or
haven't
not.
heard about those, but anyway, so I have a couple of these Solettes too, and he's great. He's making some nice instruments with a truss rod, and not with Steinberger bridge. He has his own thing, and so I don't know. I'd like to have a lot more guitars, but I
So
like what I play. So,
I imagine you've had so many students over the years who have inspired you, um, and you're gaining as much from them as they're
yeah,
gaining from you. Have
yes.
there been any that you know when it comes that really stand out over the years, from your perspective?
Um, um, there have I have taught a lot of students. Uh, there's this the one that comes to mind right away is this young woman. Her name is Abby Zachko. You're all going to be hearing about her soon, but she um, she just graduated from Berkeley, I guess about a year ago, um, and she studied with me sort of as a teenager, like from 11 until she went to college. Um, and she was at 11 she was already playing with like a heavy metal band, all adults, and she
Oh
was
my goodness.
a young girl shredding her ass off. And then she was just open to all sorts of music and really had incredible ear and technique, and um, very open minded, and she's become quite a quite a good guitarist, and she's toured around with some. She worked with this guy Muramasa, who was a British pop star. That was sort of during the pandemic, and then it was a world tour, and she had to leave high school to join the band, um, but she finished online or something.
And she
But
just finished Berkeley, as you said.
she just finished Berkeley about a year ago. Yeah, she's going to be doing some pretty cool things, I
That's
think.
great. We all have to have that moment, where we decide that we're going to get into this music. What was your initial spark into jazz?
Um,
Any concert you saw or
I have to say, because I was playing, I grew up you know, listening to classic rock. That's sort of my era.
okay,
So, I saw Hendrix. I was really into Cream um, and,
Zeppelin?
and the blues. What?
Zeppelin?
Yes, yeah. I never saw Zeppelin, but yeah, that they were, yeah.
Beatles, I'm sure.
Into the Beatles and Zeppelin, but sort of Cream and Hendrix were sort of my, and then the Allman Brothers and some of the progressive rock stuff, Mahavishnu Orchestra. But somewhere in my teens, I don't remember exactly when it was, maybe 14 or something. It was my birthday, and we lived in White Plains, which is sort of 20 miles. It's a suburb of New York City, and
Right near Tarrytown.
yeah. And I remember my mom saying, "What do you want to do on your birthday?" And I said, "Well, I want to hear some music." And so we looked in the New Yorker magazine, which really wasn't a. It's not really a jazz publication by any means, but there was a club that we looked at called the Guitar, and I had no idea. I never heard any jazz live, and um, I just said I want to go there. So we went. This suburban family drove into the city. Again, I was 13 or 14 or something, and it was in Hell's Kitchen, this club on on the west side in the 50s. and it was Jim Hall and Ron Carter,
Whoa.
maybe there were like 3 tables of people in there, and I remember just sitting right up there, and I was playing in a band and playing rock and roll and blues and stuff, and I just looked at this guitarist like, what's he doing? He's not using these pentatonic shapes that I knew. He's going all over the neck, creating these beautiful melodies, and it sort of, unhooked me from whatever I had already been expecting.
And then did you go out and like buy some of his records after that?
Yes, I mean, shortly I started to check out jazz after that. Wes Montgomery and Jim Hall, and it was interesting. Just a funny story.
No, this is where the good stuff comes.
Well, no, it's fun. I wrote an article a couple of years ago for Downbeat, because I've always thought that Jim Hall's playing on in Sonny Rollins' band, The Bridge, that great record. That there's a song on that first record without a song. That I've always felt that's like the key if you want to know how to, as a guitarist, play in a band. If you want to know how to interact, how to support, how to comp, how to just be a band member, and
He could comp for piano players,
and that was sort of a master class. Yeah. So I always told my students, you should listen to this. And then at a certain point, 3 or 4 years ago, I said, man, I should just transcribe this because I've been telling everybody, listen to it. Let me transcribe it. So I did, and as I'm transcribing it, I realized this is really all you need to know about how to comp and how to, be a band member and interact and voicings and all that shit. So I contacted Downbeat and I said, man, this is, they have that I think it's called Woodshed. It's a little series that of people giving lessons and stuff. I said, man, I think this is important to talk about, put the transcription in and talk about Jim Hall's playing. And the guy was into it, so we did it. And I remember I sent the article to Bill Frisell, who I know a little bit. And I know Bill was a big fan of Jim's, and they had played together. And we had this interesting correspondence for a while, where he was happy I had done the article, and we were talking about. He said the first time I saw Jim, man, it was at this club called The Guitar, with Ron Carter, and he was in town, I think, with his father from Denver. I said, man, it was probably the same week that I was there. So we had this funny conversation about both being sort of knocked, having our socks knocked off by Jim Hall, probably at the same club the same week, in the whatever year that was. I don't know. So anyway.
Yeah, that's I mean, my favorite solo of his is on Interplay, the Interplay on Bill Evans.
Yeah. Oh, that's
so simple, but just from the heart.
Yeah. No, Jim was sort of in a way the father of modern guitar, yeah. Modern jazz guitar.
So when you went and saw him play, did you understand at the level of the improvisation it was, or were you just taking it in just sonically?
I had no idea what he was doing. I was like, what? Where is he getting these ideas to play these melodies, and how come he's not sticking in one position playing the pentatonic blues?
And they probably weren't looking at any music either, right?
No. I just, it's sort of, this is a whole nother dimension, so yeah.
Did you get a jazz teacher after that, or were just kind of, by ear?
Yes, I don't remember exactly when. I sort of grew up with some with some people who, I was in this band playing sort of progressive rock and but I also had some friends. There's a really wonderful vibraphonist. His name is Rob Waring, and he lives in Oslo. He's been living in Norway for about 40 years. But we grew up together, and he was a bandmate and a friend and a mentor too. He really sort of had a lot of. I learned a lot about sort of the physics and mechanics of music and harmony from Rob. And then there's another friend of mine, Michael Dolan, who's a great flutist, um, who still lives in the city. And we had a band together, and Mike just had a lot of the more um, emotional and dramatic side of like what goes into music, and I just felt like I had a nice grounding with some peers, and then I did end up. I studied with I guess my first jazz teacher was a guy named John Stoll, who you may know. I mean, guitarists should know this guy.
Yes.
He's from, I guess he grew up in Connecticut, but he's been living in Oregon, Portland, Oregon, for many years. And he used to play around where I grew up, and I studied with him, I guess, when I was in high school or something, and just for a brief time, because then he ended up moving to the West Coast um, with this guy, well, to play with this guy, David Friesen, was a bass player, and they had a duo together for many years. It was really a beautiful duo. But and when John moved, he turned me on to this guy, Link Chamberlain, who was an incredible educator and guitarist. So I studied with Link for 3 or 4 years. Um, he lived in, I guess he was in Norwalk, Connecticut, and then he moved up to Candlewood Lake. But he was a really incredible um, teacher.
When so I know you saw, you were about 13 or 14, you said, when you saw Jim Hall. When you were a little older, like in, 18 into, like, let's say in the early 20s, were you at that point working in places like in smaller places like the ones you saw them playing, like playing jazz?
Um, Certainly not the ones I saw them play in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, uh, let's see. Yeah, I was, I had been, playing professionally, certainly up, before, as a teenager, a little bit, it's not supporting myself. And then in college, um, this band that I was in with my friend Rob and Mike, we played a bunch in the city in Connecticut. We did some gigs up in Canada, and yeah. So when I moved to the city after school, um, I was, I wouldn't say I was working a lot, but I was freelancing, playing in
Yeah.
some smaller clubs in
You
town.
used the word freelancing, and I know, probably around that time it was just way more for a guitarist to work, right? Like make a living
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that sense.
definitely.
Freelancing.
Yeah, there were more venues than, I mean, New York has always had things pop up and close down, and I think the pandemic really did a number on the jazz clubs in New York. Some really nice clubs closed because they couldn't hang.
Unfortunately, right?
Yeah, yeah, and no, but things have moved. I mean, now there's a lot more stuff in Brooklyn, uh, and not as much in Manhattan. Um, but there always seems to be places, even they might not pay anything or very well at all, but that's the sort of, I guess, the
Yeah.
economic.
But at the end of the day, it's about the art, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So there always seems to be Now there's still an active musical creative scene here, which is great. So, and I think somewhere in my early to mid 20s, I got this. I started working with Arthur Prysock and Red Prysock. Arthur was a jazz singer and a great sort of a baritone, really sort of like the Barry White of jazz. So had a beautiful voice, and his brother Red was a great tenor player. So it was I did a gig for about 3 or 4 years with them on the road with organ trio with sax and vocals, and that was great. I mean, because
That must have been fun.
it was great, and I really just playing this music every night with people who knew how to swing.
And still and improvising, and
Yeah, improvising too, but just that the feel of a Hammond organ, every night. It's just such a great thing to be near.
I've been on a Lou Donaldson kick the last couple of weeks.
Wow. Yeah.
So there's just, even if the drums are doing those same type of grooves, or whether it's like a shuffle or a second line, whatever you want to say, you can't replicate that organ and the drums together doing that.
Oh, I was just telling this story recently to a friend, but the first time I had gotten I had met this guitarist and at a session, I was in my early 20s, and he called me to do to sub for him in this organ trio gig in East Hartford, Connecticut, and I didn't know the players, and I was very concerned. I said, "What tunes are they going to play?" And he was like, "Don't worry about it, man. It'll be fine." I was, oh man, I don't know a lot of tunes. I'm going to be up there just playing. I'm the only horn up there, guitar, organ, and drums. And then I get up to this club. So he didn't give me any names of tunes that helped me out. And then when I got there, I said to the organist, "Man, what tunes are you going to play?" And he's like, "Don't worry about it, man. You'll be cool." So anyway, we get up there. I'm sitting on the stage. There was a bar stool, and I'm sitting. I'd never been in a club with a Hammond organ. I'd never heard Hammond organ live before this. So I'm in this small club. I can't remember the name of it in East Hartford, Connecticut. But the drummer Don Williams, and then the organ player was a guy named Ernie Jones from New Jersey, Elizabeth, New Jersey. And I'm sitting in front of my bar stool is right in front of the Leslie cabinet, which is that rotating, And so he turns to me and he goes, "F." So he yells the key, and they start playing a blues in F. And I swear to God, as soon as the music started, I fell off the chair because the Hammond coming through that Leslie, which was right in my back, was a visceral force of air, and it was like a big band was right next to me.
Like the commercials with the cassette tape when it's the guy sitting in the chair, he gets blown off by Maxell.
Yes. I literally fell off the chair. I mean, I was
so funny.
standing, but I said, "Man, I wasn't expecting this," and it was just so fun and so swinging. I just yeah. So that was, and that ended up being Don Williams was working with Arthur Prysock, and when the guitarist left,
my friends worked with him a lot, actually, with Don Williams. Yeah.
Oh, with Don Williams. Okay. Yeah.
You mentioned him a
Don's
lot.
a great guy, great player. And,
well, Ken, this has been a pleasure. Thanks so much for speaking with me today, and sharing your stories, and all of your your wisdom about this and guitar. It's so great to speak with you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and thanks for doing this, and thanks for keeping the guitar and the and the public mind.